On the morning of the 17th of December 1930, a young woman was returning home along this Chelsea street, and as she descended these steps, she was met by a policeman who had to tell her that her partner, the composer Peter Warlock, had just died from gas poisoning. Although Peter Warlock was born in the Savoy Hotel, at the time of his birth, his parents were living in what is now the food hall of Harrods, just over there. And in fact, from this vantage point on the tower of St. Luke's Church in Chelsea, one can survey all the 9 residences that Warlock had in Chelsea from 1894, the time of his birth, until his death in 1930. On the 22nd of April 1916, Warlock's flat commanded this view, and he wrote to Delius, "After a long, long period of storm and stress, I have at last attained to something approaching peace of mind, and have settled down, I hope, for a long spell, in a tiny attic studio from which I can gaze over the roofs of South Kensington, at the setting sun behind those architectural glories of which we sturdy Britishers are so justly proud, to wit, the Natural History Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum, and the ultra-phallic Imperial Institute. The Royal College of Music, though adjacent, is happily invisible." Ever since he was at Eton, Peter Warlock had long been an admirer of the music of Bela Bartok, and in 1921 he even went to Budapest to meet the composer. It therefore must have been a great thrill for him to realize that this led to Bartok's first performances in London in 1922, and perhaps even more of a thrill for him to realize that Bartok was to settle in his beloved Chelsea. For over 15 years, Bartok became a house guest with Sir Duncan and Lady Wilson, just down there, at 7 Sydney Place. On the morning of the 22nd of March 1997, English Heritage, in conjunction with the Peter Warlock Society, arranged a celebration here for the unveiling of a blue plaque to Bela Bartok.
Now, for the last 2 years, we've had 2 very distinguished 20th century composers who we've been able to honour. Last year we had Sibelius, which was very exciting, and now, of course, we have Bartok, who spent such a time in this country. But we're going to rely on others to tell you about him.
I was last inside this house when I was 23. I'd come to visit Bartok here. I wanted to do an interview with him. I'd been listening to Bartok as a pianist 2 or 3 years earlier. In fact, when he came to the BBC on 2 occasions, in the early 30s, he played his 2nd piano concerto, and I heard him on both occasions. I got him to autograph my miniature score on the 5th string quartet, which is now bound up with all 6 and first editions. There's very little else I can tell you about Bartok. The books are full of him, and you're going to get quite a the spate of his music in the last 2 or 3 days, as also the music of Warlock, who waved at me once.
Bartok did make a brief return to this country 10 years ago when his bones were conveyed from the United States to their final resting place in Hungary. One should explain that his second son, Peter, an American citizen, didn't want Bartok's bones to return to Hungary until Hungary was free. Hungary, we are delighted to say, having become free. Bartok's bones returned and stopped off at Southampton, and a number of us were invited to go there to commemorate this fact. And there was a deeply moving recital by the Lindsay String Quartet playing Bartok's sixth and last quartet, one written under the twin tragedies of war in Europe and the death of his mother. Profoundly moving, and I find, of all the many musical memories I have, sitting and listening to this concert with Bela Bartok Jr., now alas dead, the spitting image of his father sitting to one side and the other son, Peter Bartok, to the other. I mean, who could fail but be influenced and affected? Do is unveil this plaque, or rather I will try and get it detached from the railings and Felix will give it a good tug.
I would like to use this occasion to invite you for a glass of wine to the Royal Hospital of Brompton, because when Bela Bartok collected the folklore, folk music motifs, he very often invited the people who were singing and dancing for them to have a wine, because the wine encouraged them to perform.
It was largely as a result of the 1922 visit that this long association with Great Britain began. And of course it lasted until all the time until 1937. So Warlock is a sort of instrumental figure, I think, in getting Bartok to come to Britain in the first place. In 1922, they actually visited the University of Wales in Aberystwyth, and Warlock, who was a motorcycle fanatic, picked Bartok up from the station, but unfortunately he was the motorcycles that he picked tended to break down rather easily, so poor old Bartok was unceremoniously dumped by the roadside while Warlock went off to find someone who could repair the motorbike.
I think it's wonderful that both Bartok and Warlock should be honoured in this way, and that it's a wonderful celebration, both of, it becomes better known that Warlock had these connections with Bartok, and Bartok's sojourn in this country is not particularly well known, and so the plaque is unveiled, and now we know.